Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am delighted to welcome Steph, the creator of one of the top cruise blogs from the United Kingdom, Cruise with Amber. Steph and Cruise with Amber were featured in my new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, in a section called Bloggers, Vloggers, and Content Creators. Cruise with Amber was created by Steph just at the beginning of 2020. So just like me, publishing a cruising-themed book, Cruising Interrupted, as the pandemic set in, as well as several other content creators I featured in my new book, Steph presented her brand, Cruise with Amber, to the cruise world as cruising was shutting down. Didn't stop her, though. Steph sailed her first cruise as an adult, immediately became hooked, and went on to experience milestone after milestone on cruises. She got engaged on P&O Aurora, then returned to honeymoon on the same ship the following year. Steph and her husband Neil celebrated their 10th anniversary on P&O Britannia, along with their kids who were on their first cruise. Steph, welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Hi, Paul. Thank you very much for having me.
So how are you doing? How's the family?
Yeah, we're all good. It's Mothering Sunday here when we're recording this, like sort of in the UK. So it's been a nice, relaxing day with the family today, and we're all doing fine. We're all getting on really well. Kids are back to school, and I'm getting some routine back in my life again after Christmas break. So yeah, everything's good.
So as alluded to in the introduction, you and your family have shared some major milestones together on the ocean. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, I suppose it goes back to 2005, we're going to start from the beginning. So my mum and dad have been cruising for about, 5 years before that. They sort of probably started sort of a little bit sooner, actually. And we got invited to join them on a cruise. So my first cruise was on Oceania, P&O Cruises Oceania, back in 2005. And So I was cruising then with my then boyfriend, who's now my husband. One of the first milestones was that I got engaged in 2007 to my husband, and then we got married in 2008 and went back to the honeymoon on the ship in 2009. Yeah, so we've had some major milestones, and then we spent our 10th wedding anniversary on a cruise ship. So we've had some big life events, with the family, and took the kids on as well. So yeah, it's just been really lovely to have just milestones in our lives that have been kind of linked with cruising. So, whenever we go back on the ship, it brings back all the good memories and thinking, I remember when we were on with so-and-so, and, some of our family are no longer with us. So, it's nice to just reminisce and have some fun and laughs and sort of, to remember the good times as well, and create more memories as well.
I remember from the book, the 10th anniversary cruise, it was your kids' first opportunity on a ship. And if I recall, you all went all out. You had a butler and what have you. And I can't remember the line, but it was funny. It was about how the kids expect a butler on every subsequent cruise.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, we started that one off in the wrong way, I think, sort of in reflection, I think we should have just done it. Let's do inside cabin first and then work our way up. No, we went, We got a suite. It was on Britannia, that was, yeah, and P&O Cruises, Britannia. And I kind of like wanted to do something special for our 10th wedding anniversary. And I'd been looking at the different suites and sort of researching them. And I picked like the perfect one for us. It had a beautiful wraparound balcony, sort of oodles of balcony space. And we went to the Mediterranean for 2 weeks. And the girls were completely in awe of it, and sort of got used to sort of the cruising holiday very quickly, which was great and a great relief for me.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. They loved it. They enjoyed it so much. It was great.
Now, your first cruise was as an adult. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, as I said, sort of back in 2005, my mum and dad had been cruising for sort of a few years prior to that, and my sister had gone on, my elder sister, she'd gone on to a cruise with them, and I'd never sort of thought about cruising. I thought, the usual thing, it's for sort of people who are retired, and it's quite a sedate holiday. There's sort of not much appeal there for like a 20-something-year-old. And my sister had gone on sort of a cruise with them, and then she came back. She said, "You have got to come on a cruise ship. A cruise holiday is just fantastic." So I was, sharing with her some of my concerns and not fears, but sort of reservations about, would it be, worth it? And she did a good job. I think probably like my cruise blog and everything probably has her to thank really for this, mm-hmm. because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have stepped, sort of foot on a cruise ship at all, or sort of we would have been a good few years later, definitely. But yeah, she convinced me to come. She said it would be brilliant, just selling all the different things, the nightlife, the variety of things you can do on board, all the places you can see. So after that, so we went on Oceania, and I think that was a 2-week med cruise as well. I was just hooked probably after the first or second day. I remember, we'd gone to the nightclub, we'd, had a full day, sort of, and it was a sea day, so we made the most of it. And I remember ending up in, there was a little, sort of 24-hour, it was kind of like, it's not all night buffet, but it was 24-hour cafe on board. It was called, I think it was Cafe Jardin. Mm-hmm. And I sat there on my own with the crew, probably waiting for me to like go back to my cabin, and I think it was past midnight. And I sat there sort of with, I can't remember, it was like sort of a panini or a pizza or something like that. Sat there like sort of after midnight thinking, I quite like this cruising thing. This is quite good, because I can go back to my cabin now. I've had a great night. I can go back to my cabin. I feel safe going back to my cabin on my own. I don't have to wait for taxis. I don't have to like sort of, worry about where I'm going to like sort of go tomorrow and get up in time and everything. It's a sea day. So yeah, from then I was hooked. And and from there on in then, sort of just wanted to try as many different cruise lines and cruise ships as possible, really.
So a panini or a pizza many years ago was kind of the genesis of Cruise with Amber.
It was.
So talk about Cruise with Amber, the blog and your accompanying YouTube channel.
Yeah, well, Cruise with Amber really sort of started because I think it goes back to when we were going on Britannia. Okay, so Cruise with Amber really just started when I was researching some of the suites that I wanted to stay in on Britannia. I was looking online to see what information was there. And I didn't really see the information that on sort of how much, sort of in the detail that I wanted. So I started researching the suites and put some notes down, and just kept that, sort of on a document on my PC. Didn't think about anything more about it, just put it aside, and sort of booked the suite. And then started going online. We started cruising, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube, there was no cruising channels. So there wasn't anything to refer to. And all of a sudden, I just realised there's all of this information out there on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. And but I still couldn't find the information that I wanted. So I thought, well, I've got a lot of, past memories and past photos and everything. So why don't I just start an Instagram account myself and start posting things up and sharing old memories? And that got a bit of traction, and people started to interact with me on Instagram. And then I looked into, because I had a website obviously for my business, which is why it's Cruise with Amber, not Cruise with Steph, but that's another story probably go into. So I set up the website, and it just stemmed from there really. It's kind of took a while to get going. But then, it started to get going. Obviously, then we hit pandemic, which wasn't probably the best time to launch a travel website. But yeah, so it's just growing from there really, and still get sort of a lot of interaction on the website, on Instagram and YouTube and Twitter as well. So those are the main channels I tend to use and tend to interact. So at the moment, I'm probably focusing more on the YouTube channel this year. So I want to get a lot of footage that I've shot over the last 2 or 3 years since we've been back cruising, and I'm really just trying to make a concerted effort now and getting that up and sort of useful information for people. And like I did with the Britannia research I did on the suite with Britannia, I put that on as my first, or one of my first YouTube videos and one of my first blog posts, and they really took off, and I thought, oh well, this is helping people, so sort of probably do more of the same. And that's really what my blog and my website and YouTube channel is kind of really geared at. It's much more, I haven't done any vlogs or any weekly lives or chats or anything. It's much more about what I think is evergreen content. People can go back and refer to it, and if you want to find a cabin tour, I'll put the information up there, but I'll go round all of the cabin really sort of in depth. I'll open drawers, I'll open wardrobes, I'll show you where the switches are, and sort of everything. And I've had feedback from it saying this has been really helpful, either because I put menus up of a restaurant, on board, and someone said, look, I wanted to see what gluten-free options were, and you actually put them up. I didn't have to go around searching for it.
Right.
So that's the kind of content that I want to put out there, that's useful and helps people make decisions and gets the best out of their cruise. Whatever their budget, wherever their itinerary, wherever they're going, if it's helpful to people, then kind of that's my aim. So I hope it is helpful.
Now you alluded to it a few minutes ago, so let's bring this up. So I've been corresponding, with you for a good 2-3 years, and yet I still want to call you Amber. I've actually written emails to you, and I've said Amber when I meant to say Steph, and I mean that's pretty recent, earlier today. So help the listeners understand, why are you called Cruise with Amber and your name is Steph?
Okay, so I've mentioned earlier on about some business that I have that's got nothing to do with cruising, but obviously helps pay for cruises, and that's got Amber in the business name. So, and it's a combination of two of the places I've lived the longest in my life, which is a small little village in South Wales called Ammanford. And then I live in Birmingham now, as West Midlands. So it's so the Am and the Bur are a combination of the first sort of bits of both of those place names. And it helped me with my business because it's always good to be, at the top of the list, sort of if you're in a business directory. So so anyway, so Amber, people had known me then, in my other life, in my business life, as Steph from Amber. So it kind of just when I was thinking about what to call, this website that I just knew, set up. And I thought, well, everybody's calling me Steph from Amber. Why just not cruise with Amber, And then I just realised then after a while, it causes problems then having to explain. Well, not problems, but, it's just that extra little bit then of explaining that you have to do. Mm-hmm. But I now have embraced it. And I think it's like just something that it's a nice conversation and a start point, really, that, I'm not Amber, I'm Steph, but I still respond to emails.
Well, I'll get it right eventually.
I answer to both, Paul. It's fine, no problem whatsoever.
Now I know that you started Cruise with Amber, pretty much in the dawn of the pandemic, and we don't want to talk too much about that. So let's talk about the restart. Because after the restart, you went on a cruising binge. Take us through that. Why did you go on such a cruising binge, and talk about some of the wonderful ships you got to explore?
Yeah, I like that. I like the word binge as well. Like so cruising banquet as well. That's a good way of describing it as well. Because I think it was a combination of things really, because so many cruise lines had decided to start sailing after the pandemic out from Southampton, and just to do a very short itinerary for obvious reasons, because if they needed to get back to port quickly, then they could. So it was short itineraries around the British Isles. Mm-hmm. So, and lots of cruise lines were doing that, either, sailing from Southampton or sailing from Liverpool, Newcastle, Dover, Tilbury in London, lots of different Portsmouth, sort of lots of different ports. So we had so many ports that we could choose from quite close to us, and so many cruise lines that were sailing short itineraries from those ports. I kind of like it was a banquet. It was kind of that, sort of just feast on lots of different cruise ships and cruise lines that were coming to the UK, and lots of them that we probably wouldn't normally see or see on a regular basis. So there was some do actually home port from the UK anyway, but I went, I think it was MSC Virtuosa was the first one that I went on about after the pandemic, after the shutdown, and that was the very first cruise to go out of Southampton.
And I know we have some mutual friends who were on that first ship, right?
Yeah. Oh, there was lots of different people who yes, there was just like loads. And it was lovely to see people that I had met online and not met in person. And actually saw, for the first time, kind of like face to face, and that was really great. And just sort of seeing other different cruise bloggers, for the first time, that was great as well. Mm-hmm. So it started with Virtuosa, and then it went, so did Virgin Voyages, Scarlet Lady on those first cruises that went out of Portsmouth. There was Princess Cruises. I did Cunard, Queen Mary 2. There was Disney Magic that I went on. There was Celebrity Silhouette. And then there was a P&O maiden voyage of Iona, which was one of their big, sort of departure for P&Os. And LNG ship, it was their biggest ship. And so lots of different cruise ships and cruise lines I took advantage of.
Now, just as we were finishing up our interviews for my new book, The Joy of Cruising Again, you had a major cruise coming up. It was a Christmas and New Year cruise with your extended family on P&O's newest ship, the sister ship to Iona and P&O's largest cruise ship ever, Arvia. Talk about that. It sounds wonderful, but how did it go?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I mean, it was a maiden voyage because, well, we found out that it was a maiden voyage probably only a couple of weeks before we were due to depart. And the reason being is because they had to delay, they had to cancel their first, what was the maiden voyage, because there were just some delays. And I think we were still kind of like working through just some of the delays from the pandemic. So they basically cancelled the first cruise and put then the Christmas cruise, which was supposed to be her second sailing after the maiden voyage. And they now sort of promoted that then to the maiden voyage. So ironic that I didn't choose the maiden voyage for Arvia, but yet all of a sudden I was on the maiden voyage. So there were, like anything with maiden voyages, you probably know this, Paul, as well, is there's always, bits that still need to be worked out, and the crew are still finding their feet, and so there was all of that, and on top of that there was Christmas. So there were one or two kind of like missteps, I think, sort of on that particular sailing. However, P&O just sort of turned it around, and we had a brilliant time, to be honest. There was sort of so many great memories made. It was great. I mean, having New Year's and Christmas on a cruise ship, it was two firsts for me, really, and the family as well. We'd never done that before. So having New Year's on a cruise ship, we were all in the central sort of part of the ship, and the Sky Dome. They'd opened sort of the Sky Dome up, and it was just brilliant. Middle of the sea, celebrating New Year's, that countdown, I'll never forget it. It was brilliant, and it was lovely spending it as well with all the family. There was silent discos. It was just brilliant. Lots and lots of memories that we'll treasure for a very long time.
So what's Cruise with Amber working on at the present time? Any big blog posts or features coming up?
So I've just got back from a press trip to the Arctic Circle. So I was invited on Havila Voyages, one of their new ships.
Oh, wow.
To the Arctic Circle. Yeah, I mean, it's been on my bucket list for a while, and they were on my radar. But when they invited me on to, it's only four days, but wow, it was just like an amazing 4 days. And I'm in the process at the moment of creating some content around that. That's due to launch in the next week or two, hopefully, if I get my schedule sort of sorted. So I'm going to do a first for that one. There's a first for me going into the Arctic Circle. And so I thought, well, maybe sort of I need to do a first as well to go with it, which is I'm probably going to do my first vlogs. So I'm going to actually appear on camera, because all my content so far has been behind the camera. I've just stayed hidden. It's sort of a safe place for me. But I've decided, look, I need to talk about this because it was amazing. The 4 days that I stayed on board, and I want to share that with people. And I find the best way to share that is going to be going on camera and just having a chat with people, and doing some vlogs. So I'm going to do a vlog series about that, and other content in terms of a ship tour, and cabin tours and the usual content that I put out, the helpful content. So it's going to be a first doing vlogs. I've also got some river cruises, first time for river cruising in Europe. So I've got a couple of those coming up in 2023. So again, creating vlog content and cabin tours and ship tours with that. And yeah, we've got our first back-to-back cruise as well from Southampton. We've never done a back-to-back before, so we're on back on Celebrity Silhouette. And we're doing a week to the fjords and then coming back, turning around to Southampton. Then we're going to go to Amsterdam and Bruges, sort of for a couple of days as well. So yeah, there's lots of different sort of firsts this year for me. So that's kind of like the schedule I'm working on 2023 at the moment.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading your piece and watching the videos on the Arctic Circle trip. And I'm sure our listeners are as well. How can the listeners follow Cruise with Amber on social media?
Okay, I've made it really easy for people to follow me on social media because it's all going to be Cruise with Amber. If you search Cruise with Amber, you'll find me I'm on Twitter under Cruise with Amber. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. My sort of Facebook group is Cruise with Amber, and my YouTube channel is Cruise with Amber. So really, really simple. Cruise with Amber for everything, and you'll find me. If you type in Cruise with Amber in Google, it'll come up with all my different channels on there. So yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the future. I was going to ask you what do you have booked, but you kind of went over that. Did we miss anything? Are you doing anything for Christmas of 23?
Not anything planned at the moment. We're kind of like keeping that a bit fluid and open. Don't know what the rest of the family's up to. And so we'll see on that one in terms of Christmas. But 2024, I've already got a couple of things scheduled there. We're going to go on Queen Anne, so the new Cunard ship that's launching in 2024. So I'm really interested to see that offering from Cunard, because Cunard's always been sort of quite sort of traditional and sort of the older ships. So Queen Anne is that designed from scratch in terms of modern, sort of still going to be elegant, still going to have that Cunard feel. But I'm really looking forward to see what they do with that ship. There's a few things coming through in terms of some of the renderings and images, so I'm quite excited for that in 2024. And I'm going to try, I like Silhouette and the S-class ships from Celebrity, but I'm going to try an Edge-class ship for the first time. So I'm going to go out on an Apex from Southampton. So weather may or may not, sort of show her at her best, for Southampton, but we'll see. I really just want to experience the Edge class ships for sure.
Now, what about a little further out in the future? What's on your bucket list?
Oh, lots. I really love to go back to Australia and sail out of Sydney Harbour. So we lived in Australia for about 10 months. Myself and my husband did when we were doing sort of round the world travels. I'd really like to go back there and take, our kids as well. We there's so many great memories that we both made in Australia. So I'd really like to go back to Australia on a cruise in some sort of way. I'd love to do Antarctica. Now I've gone to the Arctic Circle, probably need to do the other end of things and sort of do the Antarctic. I'd love to do an expedition ship sort of down to Antarctica. So that's on the sea, and then on land, I think there's some great train journeys I'd like to experience as well. And there's the Glacier Express, which goes through Switzerland. There's some sort of amazing scenery there. Rocky Mountaineer as well. My sister's been on the Rocky Mountaineer and has said great things. And you know what? Like I said right at the start, I've got to trust my sister. She got me into cruising, so maybe I should trust her on the Rocky Mountaineer as well. And so there's a few sort of different things I'd like to try. Hopefully, I'll get the chance.
Yeah, I remember when I interviewed you for the book. I didn't know much about the rail, the luxury rail excursions, and so I've now added that to my bucket list. That's a whole new area. So.
Well, if you get there first, Paul, you'll have to share with me, all those experiences. I'd be interested then to see what that's like.
Yep, a race against time. So before we let you go, I just want to ask you a couple of fun cruise questions. And then maybe it's not really a cruise question, kind of an oddball question. I always ask this so that I can steal some ideas. What's your favorite cruise drink and cruise dish?
Cruise drink. Yeah, I like gin and tonic, but I think do you know what I really like is sort of a good lounge bar on a cruise ship with a great Negroni. You know, sort of you know, when a bartender knows how to make a great Negroni, something like that. Like sort of Take 5 on Princess Cruises. That, you know, like sort of that was a lovely experience, just listening to some great music, great cocktail. You know, can't get any better than that, really. And cruise food, there's just so much. You're making it impossible to choose there. I mean, if like sort of I was pushed to it, maybe a great burger on the Lido deck in the sun, you know, just chilling. That probably would be what would be it.
Are you a specialty restaurant kind of person?
Yeah, actually, I do like trying the specialty offerings on board. There was a great one, Alvia, actually. Sort of one of the things that we really enjoyed on P&O Cruises Alvia was it's a vegan restaurant, and I know that's probably going to put a lot of people off if they're not meat eaters. I'm a meat eater. I'm not vegan. But it was amazing. The food was gorgeous, and they had a sushi restaurant there as well. So it was combined sushi and vegan. I know that sounds a bit strange, but it's that was beautiful food, really good. And I don't think not a lot of people had tried it because they'd been put off by that vegan sort of label, but yeah, they were missing a trick. So actually, yeah, it always pays to just try some specialty dining. I mean, if you don't like it, you don't have to go again. You know, when you've tried it, you've put it down to experience, don't you?
The next one is, what's your most memorable or funny or embarrassing cruise or port experience?
I mean, it wasn't like sort of, I think it was one of those coincidence things, like when we'd gone on Oceania for our, when we were on for our engagement, and we were on again then for our honeymoon. Also we'd gone on sort of 2 ships for, I think they were about 2 or 3 years apart. We saw the exact same guy in the same part of the ship. Me and my sister turned around and said, "Oh, this is a bit weird. Like, sort of, we on the same crew, you know." And he was quite a distinctively dressed gent, and we knew, like, we'd seen him before. And it was just one of those coincidences where you just think, "Is there a time shift here? What's happened here?" But yeah, it was just one of those strange sort of meetings of like sort of 2 people in the same time, same place, like sort of, and then again exactly the same, like sort of 2 years, 3 years later. So that was a bit weird.
Wow. Sounds like an episode of Twilight Zone.
It was in Barcelona, the sun was shining, so yeah, it was weird.
Finally, Steph, I know you have a following, and welcome to the Cruise with Amber fans who are listening. Share one thing, and this is the oddball question, share one thing that my listeners and your fans don't know about Steph.
Well, I think the first thing that people tend to find out is that I am called Steph, not Amber, but we've done that. So that's known. I don't know. I think, well, I've danced with the Prince. Maybe that's something that people don't know about me. I have danced with the Prince.
Say more. You gotta say more.
That left you with a hook hanging. Did I build it up enough there? Yeah, it was when I've done my Duke of Edinburgh's award. It's a sort of a thing that sort of school kids do in the UK. It's outdoors, you know, pursuits like sort of orienteering and voluntary work. And then the Duke of Edinburgh, who was the Queen's husband, and sort of he set up an award, you know, to help sort of youngsters, you know, sort of get a footing and you know, find new skills. And so once you do this award, then you get sort of presented the award at Buckingham Palace, if you're lucky, or another one of the palaces. And then there's usually a sort of a dinner following that, sort of a few months later. And yeah, Prince Edward, who's King Charles now, his youngest brother, he was in attendance, and yeah, we managed to sort of dance sort of with him. We're all on the dance floor. So yeah, so I think that's probably my claim to fame, is that I danced with a prince.
Wow, there's not too many people who can top that one. Well, Steph, it has been a pleasure chatting with you. You know, you're one of the cruise community leaders, and you have some very interesting cruises coming up, especially the one on Cunard, what's it, Queen Anne. So,
Queen Anne.
So I know if you'll be back, we would love to have you back sometime in the future.
Oh, I'd love that, Paul. It's always a joy and a pleasure chatting to you as well. And it's been great sort of to have these conversations, as you say, sort of the last couple of years, and been delighted that you've asked me on. So yeah, gladly return.
And by the time this airs, the new book featuring Cruise with Amber will be out. So
excellent.
All right, I appreciate it, and you take care of yourself.
Yeah, all the best to you and the family. Nice speaking to you again.
All right, bye-bye now.
Bye.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.